How would you like to make $1 million? I feel like everyone wants to, but everyone is looking at things the total wrong way. Let's talk about it. I want to go over what is happening in the market, certainly the news, but I've been an investor in cryptocurrency for over 8 years now, and I think this time period is certainly one of the hardest to navigate. But we also have to take things that you see today in the news, on social media, YouTube, with a massive, massive grain of salt. First things first, though, we're going to look at what's happening over in, obviously, September. The future data is not good. This is a tweet that I put on the 31st of August. I will give you the title of it. What if we bounce in September and October we go down? Hasn't happened yet, though, has it, right? Realistically. But we'll go through it. We'll look at certain things because we have a lot of things. And in this video, I'm going to go through what is going to happen in September. September is packed. Also, what happened this week is also really interesting news. Not to mention the thumbnail, the title of this video, which made you click and made you want to understand what the hell is going on right now. But we have to look at the bigger picture. September is often bad. We're going to look at a lot of things, right? But you can see the data, very, very simple. And currently right now, we're down. A little simple caveat that we need to look at and recall and remember is the fact that the BTC inflows are doing really bad. Right now, they are doing horrible. The Ethereum ETFs, I don't need to give you any introduction, but are doing really bad. Makes you wonder, well, what's going to happen? Well, it is holiday season. It is that kind of vibe. It is a very, very big data-driven month with some big catalysts that could change the market, right? Now, this is a really good tweet here about key events that have shaped the market regarding, obviously, altcoins versus BTC. Now, you can see here, you've got the spot BTC, the ETF. Yeah, okay. And then we've got Bitcoin halving. Then we've got Ethereum. Then we've got the Ripple victory. Now, this is the altcoin chart, total 3/BTC. We'll look at that in more detail, so don't bugger off. However, there's been no real thunderous catalyst to tell us that we're going to flip at any point. However, as I said, September, there's some interesting stuff happening. Now, again, going on to the world of crypto and the Twitter world of it, is more the alarming market breadth. Only 13% of assets, top performing assets currently right now, are outperforming BTC. Picking winners is like finding a needle in a haystack, and it really is, right? I've said this for a while now. It feels like anything that will and should pump isn't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But we'll get into that in the analysis side of it because I think it makes more sense looking at the charts and understanding the theory behind it. If you're not yet done so, Patreon, check it out. Why? 5 exclusive videos every single week. Not to mention Discord, portfolio updates, what I'm doing with trading and all that kind of stuff. You can join for free. Now let's get to the silly stuff, right? So you see here very clearly that 800 million gazillion whatever percent, right? We're literally looking at stupid numbers, 84,000 percentage points, right? For Bitcoin. Bitcoin could be worth up to 49 million. Now, I'm going to go against this massively and say, I think it's bollocks, right? I'm going to openly say that, all right? Reason being, we cannot predict what the compound annual growth rate is, right? I'm going to talk about that specifically in a minute, right? This is a massive factor in picking stocks for dividend growth, right? Obviously, Bitcoin's got a different case. Now, this is kind of what I've looked at as well. I've used ChatGPT to look at this in terms of how much would you have made if you invested at certain points, right? We're going to look at that scenario, right? Now, obviously, at the start of this video, I went, well, would you like to make $1 million? It gets you interested, right? Doesn't it? Now, I've said this before. Anyone could become a millionaire if you invest a certain amount of capital every single month in something that grows over time, right? Bitcoin can be an excellent example of this. If you've been, say, investing from 2013, $1,000 every single month, there's a really good chance you have really made a lot of money, right? Even if you start tomorrow, it could be very, very interesting, right? Which we're going to look at. So let's look at the obvious. This is where I have a little bit of a problem with it, right? The bad part. We don't know if this is going to continue. This growth rate. We may well get less bull market in terms of growth and better, touch wood, maybe it acts more like a strong dividend stock where it doesn't get absolutely crippled by a market versus, say, a tech stock. But that is very much speculation, right? However, if you put in ChatGPT, if you put in $1,000 every month into Bitcoin until 2030, what could you get? Now, obviously, it's giving you the rough kind of compound growth rate and optimistic scenarios here, right? In terms of the potential scenarios of how that's grown and what you can get. Now, in terms of future value, you can get up to, stupid amounts, right? Now, this is really, really profitable because if you are putting that much in a period of only a couple of years, let's be honest here, you could be making $375,000 or $225,000 or at the base low case of $95,000. Now, I'm not saying do this. I'm just saying this is what happens when you zoom out. But this is why you need to also take, as I've alluded to, stuff like this with a massive pinch of salt, because as much as it is really good, the example that I give is a lot more realistic, right? When we talk about the base case of it. But when we talk about, well, what about in however many years? It's not just got to keep compounding up because it's going to get ridiculous. I think if Bitcoin gets anywhere near $1 million, it's going to be very, very interesting. But 49 million or 13 million, it's going to be absolutely crazy, because where is the liquidity going to come from, right? What's going to happen with the rest of the market? What's going to happen to gold? What's going to happen to the S&P 500, the NASDAQ? What's going to happen to freaking copper, milk, oil, olive oil, eggs? Get the idea? Yeah. So before we get on to altcoins, another factor of what I've just said beforehand is, well, Bitcoin mining profitability is stuck at a record low. Miners are earning an average of 43,000 per X. Fair enough, right? Depending on who you back as a miner, or if you're looking at the GPU ones or whatever ones, the hybrid ones, some of them are mining at a really, really solid rate, a really good rate in terms of, like, some of them are literally $44,000 per Bitcoin, which is free money in their eyes, right? Some of them a lot higher, like Marathon, right? But again, when we talk about stupid ass predictions of BTC being millions of dollars, right? Yeah, possibility of it becoming really high, but 49 million. What's going to happen to the world of mining? How expensive will it be to mine a Bitcoin? How hard will it be with the difficulty adjustment? It's going to be absolutely manic. Or some of these stocks are going to be one of the biggest stocks in the world. What do you reckon? Maybe. And to kind of like back this up a little bit, you obviously have the world of hash rate and the security of the network and how many miners are online. We're starting to go back up again. That's a really, really good, strong case. We've had a bit of a correction. We've had a halving, and things are starting to settle out a bit. This could be interesting to see where we follow. Now, something that could have really spooked the market, and it kind of did in a way, was a couple of days ago, was when Nvidia shares fell due to a potential subpoena by the Department of Justice, right? This has happened, it kind of came out, oh my God. And then it was like, oh, it's been denied, which is good, right? Because this is one of the biggest tech stocks in the world, one of the biggest stocks in the world. It's one of the biggest, influences in terms of crypto as well, with the AI narrative and the GPU side of it, right? It's massive, huge. So with that, we have to tread very, very carefully, certainly with the downturn in the S&P 500, if there was ever a potential recession. I don't think there is, by the way, but I'm just saying the point. A recession could be very, very strong for crypto, but very, very bad for the tech world. Growth companies. Remember, look, since obviously 2020 and the growth due to COVID, etc., things have got very, very interesting, but that could all tail off, right? We've already seen some stocks literally get crippled. Peloton's not doing very well right now. Zoom not doing very well right now. Get me an idea? Speaking of recessions, initial jobless claims came out okay, realistically, the other day. Didn't spook the market too much. Previous markets, they have. But today, we have non-farm payrolls, which is literally dropping in about 9 minutes' time. So I might well circle back to this whilst I'm doing this video, just for a bit of banter, right? So in the previous markets of last month, right, previous results, of the last month, not bad, but this came in horrendous. It might not be as bad this time. If it is, it will spook the market. We will get volatility. If not, we'll see what happens, right? So let's look at September. September is going to be massively, massively important here. So the first big bit of information that we need to kind of digest in terms of the run-up for the following week is the fact that Donald Trump sentencing date of hush money case basically is going to be upcoming on Friday. Basically, soon. Okay, we're going to look at roughly, where is it? The date has been pushed back to September the 18th, right? Okay. And it's going to all come about realistically 2 days before the scheduled meeting. So there we go, right? Middle of September. That date, by the way, September the 18th, is somewhat big. Another bit of data that is somewhat important to the world of crypto and the stock market is obviously CPI. On the 11th of September, predictions of a 2.6 inflation rate is possibly coming in. So therefore, well, that could be another factor in terms of, are we going to get a rate cut? And remember that date I mentioned, the 18th of September? Well, guess what? That is when the next Federal Reserve meeting is going to be, and our current rate is currently here. Are we going to get a 50 base points move? More than likely at the moment, or a 25 base points? Well, keep an eye on this chart because it'll depend on the CPI data and maybe non-farm payrolls today as well, potentially, right? That could change how it goes. So basically, 25 base points could be the obvious. Yeah, let's just start off nice and slow. Are we going to go full falls, two-footed tackle into a 50? Probably not. You know, we're talking about the 18th to 19th of September sort of vibe. Well, this is also happening. In Singapore, there is a massive, massive conference happening. Also in Dubai next year. But reality is, events are events, right? So you may well find that certain things will be dropped or put ahead of things, and a bit of news, a bit of information. So yeah, a big event happening too. And I think the final big thing for September, which is pretty interesting, is obviously CZ is getting released from prison on the 29th of September. However, he has been banned from basically managing the cryptocurrency exchange Binance for life. This is due to one of the plea things within his case and his sentence, which makes sense for obvious reasons in terms of what was happening. But yeah, massive, massive news that is coming out of prison on the 29th of September. So when you put it all together, September is, a bit of a dry, bleak month in terms of the past, but there's a lot of things happening in this September, which is why it is somewhat hard to navigate. Are we going to see any volatility or not? Maybe. So I want to do some technical analysis now. Check out Learning Crypto. There's a free trial if you want to learn more. There's also free courses for all the course material for technical analysis. There's a link to that below on the YouTube channel. Also, currently right now, the exchange that I'm currently using at the minute, especially, is Bluefin. Check this out. It has a massive welcome bonus. There's no KYC. It's open to the UK as well. If you're in the UK, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Pain in the ass. In terms of the technical analysis, I want to start off with something a little bit different, right? We're currently at the fear, almost extreme fear that is, of 22. Cryptocurrency and certainly Bitcoin, in my opinion, has had a haircut. A 25% haircut from the high. It basically means quite a few things. You know, where we are in terms of all these kind of information. This is where we are today, 22, right? So when we look at that, when we look at the past in terms of where this fear and greed has been, for obvious reasons, when Bitcoin is down into like the 20s, $20,000 from the all-time high, it was down to 9, which is fair enough, right? But why, when we're talking about like massive, massive dumps, yeah, cool, we're there, obviously. But when we talk about where it's been in the past, it's absolutely crazy when you think, like, I think what the problem was, right, and let's just talk about the obvious here. When this big spike was happening, when we were going up, it was the biggest trap ever. Oh God, it's going to go even lower. It's going to go even lower. Everything's going to go to 12,000, 10,000, 8,000, right? And the fear and greed was like obviously trickling up, right? And it just went huge. And then everyone just FOMO'd in. Now we're at the point where everyone shut themselves, is 25% off, and we're down at 22, which is a real stark comparison. So to just give you an idea, when we talk about, extreme fear and greed here, 75 up here, obviously we corrected down 50%. Obviously that is a huge correction, in terms of the almighty, the element around that correction. 37, and that was at 50k from 63, which is crazy in itself, right? But obviously it goes lower and even lower, and even at some of the low points down here, it wasn't even that bad. Absolute mental how it plays out, right? So let's have a little look at Bitcoin. I don't tend to do bull markets or bull flags, sorry. That's what I mean. When we see this, yeah, cool, you could be looking at a massive flag. Cool. What if it isn't though, right? What about if we're going to go low and we break out of it? Now, for me, my personal honest opinion is these are the two most important levels that we have. This is an obvious key level where we've already spiked into. That is going to be massive. It's probably going to get a retest around that point. If that bit fails and fails to hold and all that kind of stuff, we're probably going to see it go down into the 43,000. I don't know, that's going to be brutal for a lot of people. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're thinking about a correction, it's a 40% correction. That happens quite a lot in bull markets in crypto, unfortunately, especially when you look at price action like this. You know, if we're thinking from 15,000 to wherever, you're still up quite a lot. You know, this was a very interesting zone. And as I said before with the fear and greed, right, a lot of people were jumping in this thinking, oh, biggest drop ever, biggest drop ever, biggest drop. Fuck, let's just go. Yeah, that kind of didn't work out at all, right? So when we're looking at that, yeah, we're in a progressive downtrend. We're below the moving averages. We're below on the RSI. We're looking relatively bearish all over the place. Daily time frames just slowly bleeding. And when you back it up with the data of the fact of Q3 is often a really bad month, one, for the S&P 500, and two, for Bitcoin, it makes you think, well, actually, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. So we need to be very, very, very mindful of it. Remember that non-farm payroll data? Well, there we have it. So it is below estimates by roughly 22,000. The estimate around unemployment rate is roughly the same, which is good. And yeah, the estimate of the hourly earnings has actually increased quite a lot versus the estimates, which is somewhat interesting. It's moved the price a little bit though, in terms of looking at the data and the information. We were going to get some volatility here, so we are moving up. If we go to the lower time frames, you can kind of see that little bit of a hello. This is why you don't trade when there's like massive events happening. I got a few little tweets before when I mentioned it. Just there's no point, because if you were on the lower time frames and doing a scalp and expecting the data to go one way or the other, you're going to get absolutely blown up. So you need to be very, very, very mindful. Same with altcoins. Now, currently, right now, randomly, I've not actually went in a position on this, nowhere near. I was waiting for an entry around this on the 6 hour time frame, and this is what's happening right now, spiking to the upside. You've just got to wait for it to play out and see what happens, then for it to settle down, then continue as normal. So overall, in my setup, I'm looking for something like this, around this point of failure, around here to go down. It may well give me a much better order, but right now, it's all about waiting. So how does a $2,000 Ethereum sound to you? I feel that it's pretty likely to go down to the 786 level, which is a huge level of resistance. And I think that is the main thing. A lot of people have been calling for Ethereum to go low, and I myself have been saying similar sort of things, thinking the dominance is like literally dropping. It's gone from 22% down to 14.7%, right? The Ethereum pair, you know, Ethereum / BTC has been horrible. You know, we'll look at everything else. I'll look at altcoins in a minute and alt seasons, but this is the key. Ethereum doing bad makes it look worse and feels worse, right? Especially when you look at dominance going higher. Dominance is still what somewhat driving up, probably going to go around into these levels. And the main key driver to that is two things: stable currencies and Ethereum, right? So when we look at the price analysis of Ethereum, it's not looking great. It's went up and then straight back down. Absolutely, you know, doing horrendous work, realistically, right? When you versus Bitcoin and stuff like that, you know, it's already down 43%, all the way to the lowest, 48%, right? When we look at the other assets such as Solana, such as obviously BNB, Bitcoin, they've been performing much, much, much better, which is somewhat scary, thinking that this has also an Ethereum ETF, which, as I've alluded to before throughout this video, it's actually not doing too well. Another one that isn't doing too well is also Matic. Now, Matic's just migrated over to a different sort of ticker and different blockchain. Don't know 100% what has been happening, but it has moved over, and it has realistically, over the course of the last few months, certainly been struggling. It's really has dropped from, you know, $124 all the way down to 37 cents, which is an absolute horrible trend, right? Look at the daily time frame. It's just ugly. It's just horrible. So be mindful of that. Again, it's all linked to obviously Ethereum with the layer 2 technology and all that kind of stuff. So it makes you wonder what's going to happen with Matic in the long-term future. An interesting one to talk about, it is at a huge monster key level. Now, I have openly said this. I will buy Solana if it drops to silly prices. And I don't think this is silly prices. I think down into these levels would be very interesting. But as I've alluded to it, right, this has only had like a 38% haircut from the absolute top. not too far away from Bitcoin when you think Bitcoin's on a 30% correction, right? So Solana's actually been holding pretty okay. Dominance is still relatively safe in terms of where it is, about 3.24%. But the reality is, yes, you could probably argue this is a massive, massive accumulation zone. But something that is somewhat interesting if we talk about altcoins and alt season, Total 3/BTC is currently showing some signs of life. This is the potential bottom. This is where we've kind of been. And we're so far trying to get off the floor of this, right? It's going to be pretty hard though. When we look at the likes of the Total 2 and the Total 3 and stuff like that, yeah, you can see, are we going to see, is this a higher low? Is this really, really happening? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows, right? It's very, very early. Now, again, going back to the needle in the haystack analogy, what altcoin is going to pump? Well, we don't know yet. We don't, right? As much as you all think everyone knows, it's not. If you're watching YouTube videos thinking that they know what's going to happen, they fucking don't, because no one knows. Honest with you, right? What we will know is when this starts doing something. So remember, at the start of the year, we had some big, big pushes to the upside on these both little spikes. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, we had a little tiny mini alt season for a tiny little brief period, but it only resulted in, let's just be honest here, a 0.8% increase in dominance versus obviously altcoins/BTC. Obviously, if this goes up, it's good. If it goes down, it's bad. We need this to correct higher. So if we go back to this sort of situation, if we start seeing this going up, we are in a bull market for the altcoins and the alt seasons are happening. Right now, though, this is key. We are at key levels of historic support. As much as you want to back this or not, I don't know. So we'll see how things go. Once we start, hopefully at some point, ramping up, but we've failed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times we could have failed this. Oops. Now then, sticking to the world of cryptocurrency and the theme of it, let's have a little look at what's happened with the miners. Now, the miners have had a horrible few weeks with the hash rate change, with obviously halving and profitability. Now, a lot of these miners, I want to say this now, if you don't know this, they're issuing debt for themselves to buy more Bitcoin, which I know sounds daft, right? You are mining it, but they are still backing Bitcoin heavy. Some of these miners, like Samara, for example, Riot as well, have got a lot of Bitcoin. In my opinion, these are long-term holds, certainly if you're thinking of the Bitcoin cycle, the narrative of the bull market and risk on for potential recessions, all that kind of stuff, right? It's huge, massive factors. You want to back a company that is going to be actively mining something that's pretty important, which could be Bitcoin, right? So, yeah, some of them are crazy prices. Some of them are amazingly low. Yeah, this is where we are right now. Ignore some of the random notions on here. But ultimately, for me, long term, I think a lot of these mining companies will probably be worth a hell of a lot more money. And I think the technical side of it has actually been a really crazy volatile period, which has been pretty horrible. But if you think about how these all started to run, it was all because of the interest in retail that came into the market at the start of this year. Gives you a little bit of a taste of what's going to happen when the liquidity flows back in. And I can go into much bigger levels of depth around the M2 and the liquidity side of it long term with the obvious rate cuts and obvious money printing that could well be coming into the world of monetary policy again in God knows how long. Not far though. And the final thing that we need to look at is obviously the S&P 500. This is still roaring pretty heavy, pretty high, considering what's happened with Nvidia and a couple of the tech stocks. This is still doing pretty damn well. And as much as people are going, oh, recession, data, whatever, the reality is the tech world is still doing well. If there is a rate cut and it's pretty safe and fine, whatever, we may well find this going higher and then it may well correct a little bit from that point. Things are going to get very interesting, but as I say, September is an often bad month for the S&P. So far, it's not been too terrible so far, but we'll see. There we go. Hope you enjoy. A lot longer than normal. If you like this stuff, as always, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.